Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Hesse Bros Pod. It's your boy Brent Hesse joining me, my brother Luke. We've got a lot of football to talk about. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We had a Thanksgiving episode with Quentin on the show. Got to see Q, always happy. You know, it's Thanksgiving, it's family time. Had to extend the pod out to another Hesse Bro. But it's me and you back here today, Luke. What's going on?
Not much. We're gearing up for a big matchup today on Thursday. As we know, the Lions and the Packers both played last Thursday, and they're running it back this Thursday, this time playing each other in a huge matchup. We're going to get into it all. Where do you want to start, BS?
So you're telling me it's like the Thanksgiving championships. It's like the out of the six teams that played on Thanksgiving, the two best now play the next Thursday to see who was actually the best team on Thanksgiving. That's pretty cool.
Be awesome. And we all know who the best team on Thanksgiving is. But it'll be a great game. I think one of the biggest games up to this point so far in the year, and we're getting down to it. You know, it's pretty crazy being a Lions fan in December, and we haven't lost since September. I don't know. That's never happened, and it's pretty lit.
That is crazy. And the thing is, kind of Lions have been getting a little disrespected in the media because apparently a few more teams are hotter than them, even though they haven't lost in 2 months, like you said. Some other teams, I guess, are doing it with more style points. I thought the Lions were the king of the style points. We'll be talking about that later on. Best team on Thanksgiving, though, might have been just all they were missing was a coach. If they knew about a guy with timeouts, then there might be a different best team on Thanksgiving. So give me a recap on that Lions Bears game that saw Eberflus hit the road after the turkey was all gone.
It started off pretty amazing. I think the Bears had about 50 yards in the first half, and the Lions were absolutely cooking. Jahmyr Gibbs, when we were up 16-0 in the first half, fumbled inside the five. If he punches that in, the game's over. They can fire Eberflus at halftime. But as it turns out, the Bears battled back, and everyone kind of sees they're a good football team. They have good players. Caleb Williams is playing really well as of the last few weeks, ever since they fired their old offensive coordinator. And now with Eberflus gone, I could see this team making a big jump. Playoffs is out of the picture at this point, but they got to try to build towards the future of next year. And they got a pretty good squad to do it. And especially if Keenan Allen is playing the way he did last weekend, 2 touchdowns for a guy that late in his career, and they got a lot of rising stars. So can't count them out in any of these games coming up, and certainly not for next year. That the NFC North is going to be a tough division for years to come. Lions got to get it done this year.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, one of the tough parts about that Thanksgiving game was another set of injuries. The Lions defense kind of getting depleted. What's your level of concern, 1 through 10, on the injury front for the Lions defense?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely pretty concerning. Not really having very many linebackers left. Anzalone's out. Our only linebacker that we started off the year with is Jack Campbell. We're bringing in Jamal Adams out of nowhere, saying he's going to be a linebacker for us, and Quan Alexander off the Broncos practice squad. So they might need to suit up and get in there right away. Also, our defensive line's pretty banged up, and hopefully Carlton Davis can play at corner. We're going to need everyone we can get, but as long as we got that duo back there of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, I don't think the Packers are going to have too many huge plays against us, and maybe we can get a pick or two. That'll swing the tides right in our favor tomorrow. But we're going to get into that more. But at this point, it's still the regular season, and the Lions have always had that next man up mentality where I feel like Aaron Glenn finally has his defense the way that he wants them playing, even when Hutchinson goes out, and we have lost some other players. So I'm not too worried about it. If we lay a complete egg on defense, maybe I'll rethink that. But until I see it on the field, I'm not counting the Lions out on defense.
Nothing really else Thanksgiving wise to talk about. There was a boring game where you could nap during it. Cooper Rush versus Drew Lock, and then big surprise, the Dolphins were cold. Okay, that's just not nothing new. Don't need to talk about that game. And so then we'll move on to Black Friday, where the Chiefs were the first team in the NFL to clinch a playoff spot. I was there at Arrowhead to witness it. Another very odd but Kansas City like this season type of game where the Chiefs were in control the whole way, had a 10-point lead, couldn't convert touchdowns, struggled in the red zone. Mahomes kept getting sacked. Then all of a sudden, Brock Bowers goes off. Raiders get two quick touchdowns. They're ahead. Chiefs get a field goal, take a 2 point lead. Looks like they're in good shape. And then back to back three and outs. Antonio Pierce basically Eberflused himself by deciding to kick a 58-yard field goal after the guy had already missed a 56-yarder short. He's like, well, he missed that one short. Let's go back 2 yards and see if he can do it again. It's only gotten colder. The ball's only harder to kick now. Of course, he missed that one short, but then the Chiefs couldn't convert again. And then Aiden O'Connell almost had a legacy drive down the field until the crowd noise at Arrowhead got just a little bit too loud and he forgot to keep his eye on the ball. The center snapped it when he wasn't ready and the Chiefs win in just another bizarre fashion at the end. But Kansas City keeps getting it done, and it was a weird game. Are you happy about the result? Are you frustrated? Well, the players showed both sides of that emotion coming through the tunnel. I was right there entering the locker room. And the first players off the field, Travis Kelsey, some of the other guys that didn't shake hands just went right in the locker room as soon as they kneeled it down the last time. They were not happy. The first about 20 guys that ran through that tunnel, you would have thought the Kansas City Chiefs lost. Then, as the guys started coming in slower, the guys that were staying on the field, shaking hands, doing post game interviews, guys that were coming back, Chris Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, his first game back, Patrick Mahomes, those guys, they were happy about the win. You could tell they were energized. Just whether it was for Pacheco first game back, for Mahomes getting a division win, clinching a playoff berth, Chris Jones and the defense coming up with that stop at the end. So it was really weird because there was guys on one side that you could tell they were frustrated, felt like we, didn't do what we set out to do. Other guys that did, they're happy with the result, although they recognize the same thing. The Chiefs are going to have to play better than that if they want to accomplish their goal, which is, of course, to three-peat. So it was definitely an interesting game, but kind of along the lines of a lot of these Kansas City Chiefs games in recent weeks.
It was certainly a crazy finish, and the Chiefs barely get away with it again. Probably some dark Mahomey magic on that one. Taylor Swift up there in the stands with you, B Hess. That's pretty cool up there in the box. I was wondering though, Brent, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but most of the media does have the Chiefs kind of a tier below the top teams. What are the vibes like up there in Kansas City? I know you were there for it. What are the vibes like? Do they feel like it's all in front of them to get this three-peat, or do they need, everything to kind of go their way? How is that kind of looking like?
Well, it's different because like you said, it is, there are some frustrations. The last 5 games, the Chiefs are 4-1, but in those 4 victories against the Buccaneers, the Broncos, the Chargers or the Raiders and the Panthers, all 4 of those games came down to the final play, or in the Raiders' case, they did get one kneel out, the final 15 seconds of the game. But the Buccaneers was decided last play of the game. Kansas City scores a touchdown. Broncos, last play of the game, block a field goal. Panthers, last play of the game, kick a game winning field goal. Raiders, with 15 seconds to go, scoop up a fumble on an errant snap. So, yes, the Chiefs have been winning as late as you can get against some of those are playoff teams or playoff caliber teams. Broncos and Buccaneers are at least playoff caliber teams, whether they get in or not. They're fringe. Panthers and Raiders, different story. So yeah, there is frustration that this team's like, why can't we win a game by more than the last second play, by 3 points, by 2 points, whatever it is. But the difference is they're winning. This point last year, I was at the Bills Chiefs game where Kadarius Toney lines up offsides. The Chiefs lose that game, and then that sinks them to what? They were like 7-5. They did not have a good record, maybe 7-6 after that loss. So now they're 11-1. They clinched a playoff spot, which is the earliest Kansas City's ever clinched a playoff spot in the franchise history. So I think that you have to look at it through a wider lens. Yes, the Chiefs right now maybe are the vibes not as good in Kansas City as they are in Atlanta or Detroit or Buffalo. But are they better than they were at this time last year when Kansas City ultimately lifted the Lombardi 3 months, 2 months later? Yeah, they're better than they were last year because they're winning these games. Last year they were losing these close games. Players were dropping the ball in the clutch spots. This year they're coming up with the plays in the clutch. It's just, they don't want it to have to come down to the final play. But yeah, I think that as long as Kansas City starts finding that upward trajectory, they're going to need to hit that stride. They're going to need to hit play their best football, but they didn't start playing their best football until the playoffs last season. So I think the vibes are all right. They're maybe teetering a little bit, but no concern in terms of that they won't be able to get there when it matters.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just watching the games, you can tell if they don't pick it up based on the way they've played these last 5 weeks, they're going to get bounced through their first or second round of the playoffs. I mean, if they don't play better, if they play like they did these last 5 weeks, they're going to either lose to Buffalo or they're going to get bounced in the first round if they play like they did against some of these other teams that are middling. And I mean, that's just the way it's going to go for the Chiefs unless they do pick it up, which definitely could happen. But let's see. Moving on here, there were some good games on Sunday. Let's see. The Ravens took that loss to the Eagles. How are you feeling about the Ravens, Brent? I feel like that's a team that we've both been kind of high on all year. Pretty solid team. And the Eagles come in and get the dub. Is it Justin Tucker's fault they lost? Did Lamar do everything he could? I don't know, man.
Lamar didn't play great. I think he even said in the press conference after the game, he said his mom told him he was so mad. His mom was so mad at him because he didn't run enough. And there were some instances it looked like, especially on some big third downs, that he could have tucked it, ran, got the first down. Instead, he tried to make a throw downfield and killed some drives. But yes, Justin Tucker. I mean, I think they need to get rid of him. I mean, he is bad. He's been on my fantasy team. He's been a nightmare for me all season long. In the biggest spots, he has just under delivered. The Steelers game a couple of weeks ago, the last time they lost, he was bad. He missed a kick when they lost to the Raiders back in week 2 that would have been a big game changing kick. And then he leaves 7 points on the board against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. He is a liability. And there's a lot of liabilities on this team. The defense has been a massive liability in the secondary all season long. That's getting better, but it's still would concern me if I was a Ravens fan. They're the way that they rack up penalties. I think they lead the NFL in penalties. That's a liability. That would concern me if I was a Ravens fan. And Justin Tucker would be right there in that mix. So, yeah, there's a lot that worries me about the Ravens that I don't know if they can put together enough games to win a Super Bowl. They're very talented. They've got Lamar and Derrick Henry. They've got good players on that defense. They're a talented team, but they just seem like they can't put it together consistently enough to where they could win 4 games in a row, most of those being on the road, which is what it looks like that would have to be the case at this point. So could they beat somebody, then pull off an upset as a 5 seed, or even if they somehow do, will still win the division and get to the AFC Championship game? I could see that, but I don't see them being able to play it consistently enough. Unless they get rid of Justin Tucker, maybe then that would be one worry off the board.
I just think it would be hard to get a better kicker than him at this point in the season. A lot of kickers have been playing really bad, and I think you just kind of have to play it differently. You can't just send him out there for a 55 yarder. You got to either go for it or figure something different out.
The Chiefs have 3 kickers that are better than Justin Tucker. 3 of them. I mean, it's not that hard to find a kicker. They got butt kicker, of course. He's on IR. He'll be back for the playoffs. Then they signed the Spencer Schrader guy, and the Jets poach him off the practice squad. And the Jets are like, "Oh no, 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 we don't want you to leave. Like, would you be our starting kicker?" He's like, no, I'd rather kick for Kansas City than the stinky Jets. He's better." And then he got hurt. Now they send on this Matthew Wright guy, and he just outkicked Carlson on Friday night. So the Chiefs have 3 kickers better than Justin Tucker. It can't be that hard to find one.
That's fair. Maybe they need to look into that. And to your point earlier, Brent, it does seem like this Ravens team is like a bad pipe or some bad plumbing. You cover up one part where it's spouting and it comes shooting out somewhere else. Defense gets fixed, boom, Lamar's playing bad. Lamar, both of them are playing good. Justin Tucker's over here missing 3 kicks in a game. It's like they got to be able to figure it out. And like you said, when it comes down to the playoffs, it's all about consistent performances week after week. And you're just not seeing that out of the Ravens. I'm real worried about them. That was my Super Bowl pick, but I'll stick with them for now. I think that Lamar's good enough to where he can maybe get it together. John Harbaugh is a good coach too, but it's going to take a big resurgence in December and January. Let's see. Do you think the
Eagles, though,
Eagles are the real deal?
they're good. They're a very good team. I mean, they got everything you could want besides a quarterback and a coach that you can fully rely on. Their offensive line, dominant. They protect so well. They run that tush push. They give Saquon Barkley massive holes. Saquon is a superstar, of course. It took him a while to get going because the Ravens are one of the best defenses in the league in stopping the run. But then he had those plays in the fourth quarter to really bust it open. The receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Smith's been out for a while. He's fabulous. A.J. Brown's a beast. Then on the other end, that is a really good defense, and that's the biggest surprise for me. Last year, that defense was a sieve late in the year. They've got great players up front and just really great young players. Carter up in the middle, he's a second-year guy. He's fantastic. Then they've got those two rookie cornerbacks, DeJean and Mitchell, that are playing out of their minds. That's a good defense. And yeah, I mean, Hurts, do I trust him every down? No. Against a lot of playoff teams, I would take the other quarterback over him. I don't think he's bad by any means, but I think he's maybe an average playoff quarterback once we get down to, the 14 guys that'll be starting in the playoffs. At best, he's going to be average, middle of the pack. And coaching wise, they'll be one of the coaches I'd trust the least. But everybody else on that roster, it might be the best out of every team in the NFL. I think it would be. I think I would take them outside of quarterback and coach than any other team in the NFL.
I still think the Lions would be better, but it's pretty close. You're right. They do have a great roster, especially with those young guns on defense, like you mentioned. I'll be interested. It seems like there's a good chance that it'll be Lions versus Eagles in the NFC Championship, and I'm just hoping the Lions can hold on enough in the regular season to have that be at Ford Field. But we'll see how it comes down to it. And then on Sunday night, BS, the Bills versus the 49ers in the snow, in the frozen tundra up there, lake effect snow in full effect. And Brock Purdy, he just doesn't have it in the snow. I feel like if I would have known that it would have been that snowy whenever I called it last week, it was just so obvious the Bills were going to kill him. Josh Allen versus Brock Purdy in the snow. Like, come on, that's too easy. And Josh Allen's playing like the MVP right now. You think he's going to take it down?
One quarterback looked like a superhero, literally throwing, catching, running, passing, everything, touchdowns. And I texted my buddy after that play and I said, Josh Allen is actually a superhero. And then the other one was a pumpkin, just straight pumpkin ball on the field. It was like, how did this pumpkin get on the snow? They don't grow in these kind of climates. Well, one did on Sunday night, and his name was Brock Purdy Pumpkin. So, yes, the 49ers can go ahead and pack their bags for the offseason. Meanwhile, the Bills, they're growing with confidence. They're a good team. I mean, there's nothing more to say. They're getting better and better each week. The snow, how does that go forward with the team? It's hard to say because obviously not every week is going to be like that. It changes the entirety of the game when you play on a surface like that. It looks everybody look like just an average human because they're not running super fast. They can't get that get off. They can't cut like they normally can. Looks like me or you if we were to play on a regular field. That's about how we would look like except for that James Cook run. He still looked really fast on that one. But yeah, I mean, Allen and Barkley, that's the MVP discussion. I think if Saquon Barkley breaks the rushing record single season, he's my pick for MVP. But Allen's had a great season. He is in terms of the phrase, most valuable player this season, without a doubt, it's been Josh Allen. They're what 9-2, one of the best records in the NFL, and he is the entirety of that team. Without him, they don't have a lot else in terms of on their own. Collectively, they're great. They're a great team. It's not a one-man team by any means, but he does so much for them in a lot of different ways that I think it's fair if he gets the MVP. I think it depends on what Saquon ends up doing. If Saquon has a record-breaking season, then that's where my vote would be.
I agree with that. I think it basically comes down to that. If Saquon breaks the record, you got to give it to him. AP broke the record, and that's the last non-quarterback to win it. And I feel like if Saquon does it, you got to give it to him. If Josh Allen slips a little bit, though, maybe loses one or two more games, especially if the Lions beat him and Saquon doesn't get the record, sneaky Jared Goff is popping in there for the MVP. If we go
Uh,
16-1, there's a good chance, especially beating the Bills late down the stretch. You got to give it a little bit of chance of Goff sneaking in there for the MVP.
I don't know. Who else could go 16-1? Patrick Mahomes. And Mahomes didn't throw 5 interceptions in one single game. He may have thrown interceptions in like 7 straight games, but I think it would be you could make the equal argument for Mahomes as you could Goff, and I don't think either one of them are very much in the discussion at this point. They're in the fringe, but yeah, I think they would both have to win out or come very close to it, and both Saquon and Josh Allen would have to fall off a little bit. A lot of games left, 5 games left. I mean, hell, if Lamar runs the table, he's been playing great. He could still be in the mix, depending on how everything else shakes out. But yeah, that was the Sunday slate. Of course, we had that Jameis just glorious game, 400 yards, 2 pick sixes. He said, and I pray to the Lord, deliver me from these pick sixes. So that was just beautiful, Jameis. He's always a very funny guy. And then we had just the nightmare play of Alshire just destroying Trevor Lawrence on the field. That one was pretty brutal. You have any comments on that one?
I mean, it was rough. I just think it's funny how he got up immediately and looked at the ref and was like, "Why'd you throw a flag on that?"
Yeah, then just
That's the
started.
part that I don't get. I'm like, bro, you clearly just fucking
He
took
took off
out
his
the
helmet and was
quarterback,
like,
bro.
"Well, I guess I'm just gonna have to fight this whole entire sideline that's coming to attack me."
Yeah, he
Unfortunately
was more
for
worried about the flag.
yeah, unfortunately Trevor Lawrence looks like he's gonna be going on IR. Probably will end his season. Shire gets 3 game suspension. Not good all around. Craziest thing is people are blaming Patrick Mahomes for it. Do you hear about this?
Oh yeah, because he always sneaks around the sidelines and tries to get the extra yards.
Yeah, I think it's bizarre. People love
Well,
to
do you
find a way.
see?
People love to find a way to put like try to criticize the Chiefs when he literally has nothing to do with it.
Did you see when Caleb Williams tried to do that against the Lions and he got absolutely rocked by
Oh
Jack
yeah,
Campbell? That
he
was
did.
awesome.
He did get rocked.
He was trying to sneak around the sideline. He was trying to be all my homie. He said, "No, Detroit Lions, that's not flying. That's a kneecap."
Yeah, that was a kneecap. Okay, one other one I want to talk about real quickly. Falcons Chargers and the Kirk Cousins debacle. Looked like the Falcons had so many chances to win that game, and Cousins just throws 2 picks in the end zone, a pick six. I mean, can the Falcons keep going with Kirk? I mean, is there a legitimate argument to put Penix in the lineup?
Yeah, we're going to talk about this game coming up. Kirk Cousins going back to Minnesota, and I think if he lays another egg and they get destroyed by Minnesota, you got to think about putting Penix in, especially because the Falcons still have a chance to win this division. And if Kirk Cousins is just, absolutely leaking everything that he has, giving up this entire season, you got to think about making the switch to Penix, who has played a lot of football, has already sat underneath of him for 10 weeks, is completely fresh and yeah, he's played a lot in college. He did have a couple injuries, but he's played a lot of games. Pretty experienced in college, and you'd think he could come into a pretty strong offense, the great running back, and pretty solid weapons, and be able to at least put up a fight. Whereas if Kirk Cousins is doing this same thing over and over, I mean, the Falcons still had a chance to win that game. Even with 2 picks and a pick six, it still took another pick at the end of the game for Cousins to lose the Falcons that game. They still had a chance to win it against a good Chargers team. So the Falcons have good players over there, and if Cousins keeps costing them games, they got to look past the contract and give the rookie the ball.
Yeah, especially I think one of the biggest arguments for it is look how the other rookies are doing. Jaden Daniels has his team set up to make the playoffs. So does Bo Nix. Caleb Williams playing well. Drake May playing well. Those are the 4 other rookies in the first round that aren't injured. So I think, man, I'm kind of wanting to pull the trigger right now. I guess you're right. It is the Minnesota return game this week. So give Kirk one more. But I need the Falcons to win that division. And right now, I kind of think Penix gives them a better chance than the way Kirk is playing. He just doesn't look like he's got the same juice he had even earlier this season. But I think that's a good segue into this week's games, unless there's anything else you want to touch on. Let's hear Packers Lions.
Let's do it. So I think it's going to be a pretty good game, and everyone, the fancy pick this week is take the Packers. Lions are dealing with injuries. Packers are playing really well. But you got to go with the Lions in this spot. In our last 5 games, we've beaten the Packers 4 times. All right, the Lions own the Packers, and we know what we're doing. Dan Campbell knows how to beat this team. All right, Jordan Love always gets a little scared, and even if our defense does, slip a little bit with the injuries, I think Ben Johnson knows that it might take a big game from this offense and we're going to be ready to put up some points. I can feel a lot of points coming in this game. I think it'll be a high scoring one. And for that reason, I think this is the Jahmyr Gibbs game. Take his over on everything. 2+ touchdowns. I think we're going to feed him the ball, especially midway through this game, trying to keep the clock, but also get the ball down the field. He's the perfect player for a game like this in the dome against a divisional rival. I hope that Taylor Decker plays. We're gonna figure out soon, but I think this is gonna be a good game for Gibbs, and I can't wait to see it happen. I think the Lions are gonna get this one done.
Yeah, Packers have had two, pretty resounding victories the last 2 weeks, but who were they playing against, really? A beat up Niners team with who, I don't even know who was quarterback, Allen something, and then the Dolphins and the Cold. So when you think about it, those are probably two really bad teams. Cold Dolphins and a backup 49ers, no Bosa, no Purdy team. I like the Lions in this spot too. The Lions already won in Lambeau pretty resoundingly. Now they come back at home. Both teams are on the same amount of rest, so there's no factor there. But I think Detroit's going to be amped up for this game, and it's a massive game, too. If Detroit loses this game, then they could be even with Minnesota on record, only a game behind the Packers for third place in the division. So right now the Lions are comfortable at the 1 seed, but there's a world where they lose this game into the Vikings later on. They could be the 6 seed in the playoffs. This is huge.
Yeah, and I think that's the message Dan Campbell's given to the squad. And the Lions, like I said, we've been able to dominate the Packers. The only game we lost in the last 2 seasons and this one is on Thanksgiving last year. And the Lions never play great on Thanksgiving. That's well known. But I mean, this team is ready to fight. And like I'm saying, it didn't even take a loss for the Lions to already be taken off that highest pedestal and put behind teams like the Eagles and the Bills. And you know that they're
Oh,
showing
so
that
now you know how
quality.
it feels, huh? Now you know how it feels.
I know how it
Having
feels.
won,
And
the Lions haven't won two Super Bowls in a row.
yeah, well, I kind of like it. I feel like this is a good position. It's like, all right, these idiots are saying that about a team just because they want something new to talk about. Give them something new to talk about. Lions are about to go whoop that ass at Ford Field. Packers are going down. Green Bay sucks.
Well, that is our Packers Lions. I agree with the Lions. I'd take the Lions even -3 in that one. Now, Chargers Chiefs. That is a Sunday night game. Kansas City can lock up the AFC West division title for the ninth straight season if they win on Sunday night at home against the Chargers. Kansas City beat LA back on the West Coast earlier this season. That was unfortunately the game Mahomes injured Rashee Rice, but then he threw the dime to Xavier Worthy, and the Chiefs won by 7 points. I like the Chiefs in this spot. I think that maybe this will be the first game in the last 4 wins that doesn't come down to the last minute of the game. I think it'll be close, but I think the Chiefs win this one by a touchdown. I really like Pacheco to have a big game here. Pacheco didn't play in the first meeting between these two teams, and he got back last week, ran a little bit, had a big 30-yard run. Kareem Hunt has been great. Hasn't had a run 20 yards or more all season long. Pacheco has that burst ability that Hunt does not have. I think Pacheco is going to be. Hunt got more snaps. They each had the same amount of carries. Hunt had more snaps last week. I think that'll be reversed this week. Pacheco will get more snaps, more touches, and I think he has a big game against the Chargers, and the Chiefs win 24-17.
I think you kind of nailed this one, Brent. I was gonna, come in here and say the Chiefs suck and you should always bet against them, but when the spread's only 4 points, you can't really bet against the Chiefs. Now, usually it's like 13 points. It's the easiest bet ever. So, unfortunately, you can't make free money this week. But uh, the Chargers, the Chargers just did not show me a whole lot against the Falcons last week. Like I said, they should have lost that game. And I think a big part of that is J.K. Dobbins is not playing for them. Their running back, they've relied so heavily on that running game and not having Dobbins there. I don't see them being able to move the ball with their rushing attack very, very much at all against the Chiefs. And if they're relying too much on Herbert, which I don't even know if Harbaugh is going to do at all, it's not going to end up in a W for the Chargers this week, I don't think. I'm thinking Chiefs by about 3 or 7, so I'm not touching this 4 point spread at all. But it should be a good game. Chiefs should be able to get the dub.
Yep, over Pacheco would be my play in that one. And now let's talk about some other games. We covered Lions and Chiefs are both on prime time this week, as they should be. Those should be excellent games playing fellow playoff teams when it's all said and done, no doubt about it, in their own division. So, what are the other games that catch your eye this week?
Yeah, so one of my favorite games, we've already talked about it a little bit, is Kirk Cousins going back up there to Minnesota. I know Quentin's going to be locked in on this game, and both teams really do need it if the Vikings want to stay in contention for their divisions. So it's going to be a big game, a lot of stakes on it, and I think that Cousins is going to be able to pull through. I kind of teased it a little bit, but 6 points to the Falcons with this spread, and I kind of like the money line, but especially the spread because the Vikings have not been blowing teams out. They barely beat the Jaguars. They just barely beat the Cardinals on a last second touchdown. 6 points against a Falcons team that only lost that game because their quarterback played so terribly. And Bijan Robinson is playing on another level. You know, if there wasn't so much hype around Saquon and Derrick Henry, he could easily be the best running back in the league up to this point in the year. And so I think the Falcons are going to really bring it to him. And Kirk has to walk into this game. You know, he's had this circled on his calendar. And I feel like this is the time where the Falcons can get out of this slump in a three game skid. And they need a win right now. They need it bad, and they'll be able to get it.
I share a lot of those same sentiments. Cardinals was one of my upset picks last week going to Minnesota, and that looked so good for so long, up 13 in the fourth quarter. Vikings end up winning and give all props to them. They come up with the stop they needed. Darnold has the game winning drive. But yeah, I think they've been playing with fire for quite a while. Falcons are in a slump, and it's kind of one of those trends where, people are fading the Falcons. They see that they've been struggling. Well, eventually those are going to reverse course, and I think that meets the median back here this week. I like the Falcons to win outright on the road against Minnesota. Going to be a fun one. Definitely Falcons, one of my underdog picks of the week.
That's awesome. There you go, Q.
Don't screw it up now, please. I need it.
We need it. All
Okay.
right. Another game
Game
we got to
up.
talk about.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this might be the one you were thinking about. Is that Seahawks going to Arizona? These are two of the teams we've been talking a lot about. Big hype around this division about who's going to be able to come out on top. And this is a game that very well could decide it. This could be the two teams that it's come down to, and we're looking back at the end of the year being like, this game goes the other way. Another team's in the playoffs. So how do you kind of see this one shaking out? We saw last time they played just a couple weeks ago. Kyler Murray had his worst game of the season, looked terrible, and the Seahawks get that dub pretty convincingly. How do you see this one shaking out in Arizona?
Well, it is, I think, the most pivotal game of the week in terms of playoff picture because the Cardinals have to have it. Right now, the Cardinals are a game behind Seattle at 7-5 versus Arizona 6-6. Seahawks have already won the game in Seattle, like you mentioned. So if the Cardinals lose this game, they essentially are 3 games back for first place because they're 2 games back and don't have the tiebreaker. They need to make up 3 games in the last 4. Basically, they're done. So they have to win this game or else Arizona's not going to make the playoffs. Yeah, so backs against the wall. They blew a prime opportunity last week against Minnesota. Meanwhile, Seattle came all the way back against the Jets. Of course, Aaron Rodgers tried to help give them that game in the second half, but Seahawks hated kickoffs in the first half against the Jets. They fumbled on 2 kickoffs, lost them both, and they gave up a kick return touchdown. Somehow they came all the way back from that because they were playing just an awful team in New York. But this is going to be a very interesting game. I mean, I think the way that the Cardinals have been playing recently, you've got to believe in them. They've lost 2 games by close margins recently. I know they ended up losing to Seattle by 10, I think was the final score, but they were in that game the whole way. And of course, they were up on Minnesota. I mean, I've been with the Cardinals all season, so I'm going to stay riding with them. But if they lose, then this is their backs against the wall.
I'm right there with you, Brent. I just don't think the Seahawks are as good. I think they should have lost last week against the Jets. The Jets had, any ability to win a big game, to win a game at all. And so I'm rocking with the Cardinals. I think that, like you said, backs against the wall. Kyler Murray and that team is just more talented, I believe, than the Seahawks, and they'll be able to get it done. But it'll definitely be a very interesting one. Got to be locked in on that one on Sunday. What other game do you like on Sunday, Brent?
Well, let's talk about the other NFC West team that has a chance in that division while we're at it. Rams hosting the Buffalo Bills. Rams are 6-6. Bills just continue to roll. This is kind of the second hardest game the Bills have left on their schedule besides the Lions. So the Chiefs, of course, would love to get a little bit of leeway in that race for the one seed with the Rams victory. But I don't know if the Rams are good enough to beat the Buffalo Bills. What do you think?
I actually do think the Rams are good enough. I think Stafford has been playing pretty solid, and they're getting Kyron Williams the ball. They're even getting Blake Corum decently involved too, and he looks like he's got some spring in his step. And I think that this is a game where the Bills, they're coming off that snow game, and the Rams are going to be playing at home. Bills going across the country to LA, and I could see them starting a little slow. They're getting some of their weapons back. Keon Coleman's coming back and trying to get back his footing, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think the Rams have better weapons in their offense than the Bills do. Even counting Josh Allen as a weapon, Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup are starting to hit their stride after starting off the season with those injuries, and I think that this is a game where the Rams show the world, you know, they're still here. Still a good team, and as we remember last year with a pretty similar team, at least on offense, they took the Lions to the wire, and the Lions obviously had a great chance to make that Super Bowl. The Rams were easily contenders for the NFC last year, and I think that they're going to be able to do something similar this year, rounding out the season. I have them winning this division, and I feel like they can get it done against the Bills. That team's riding pretty high right now, and I think it's time for them to get taken down a notch.
It's kind of the same trajectory the Rams hit last year because they did have a great record early on, got hot, made the playoffs as a wild card, and you're right, almost pulled off the win in Detroit. Well, that's more faith than I have. I like the Bills in that one, but we'll see. I wouldn't be mad if the Rams end up winning, but if I have to lay it aside, I'll take the Bills -4. One team though, I do like an upset on. One more upset that I've got. I like the Falcons, and I also like the Bears, the fire the coach bounce game. I mean, the 49ers are just completely reeling. You know, poor McCaffrey, he's out for the season. Now so is Jordan Mason. Purdy, I mean, is out of sorts. Nobody knows what's going on with this team. Debo doesn't look like himself. Nick Bosa hasn't played in 2 weeks. I mean, I just think the 49ers have lost all hope. Meanwhile, the Bears, they're playing well. This is now 3 weeks in a row, all against NFC North teams that they have taken the game down to the final play. And this will be the spot where they get over the hump. 4-point dogs. I like Chicago.
This has to be the most obvious bet of the week. I mean, I'd put everything on this just because Caleb Williams has been playing really well. He's going to outplay Purdy. Jordan Mason is out as well for the 49ers, along with McCaffrey out for the season. They're out here starting Isaac Guerendo. He was the backup running back for Louisville last year. He wasn't even the starter. And you really think this team is going to be able to beat the Bears? It's not going to happen. I mean, the Bears did pretty decent against the Lions rush attack. What are they going to do against Guerendo? I mean, come on. This is going to be too easy for the Bears to get a lead, have Williams back there playing comfortable without having to worry about Bosa, and this is going to be carnage for the 49ers. I'm actually kind of happy to see it. I'm ready to see them burn after last year. It's kind of lit, and Bears can have a few wins whenever they're already out of it, and see who they pick up as a coach.
Well, we're seeing the board pretty clearly, I think, Luke. Falcons and Bears are my two upset picks of the week. We also mentioned the Cardinals Seahawks game and Rams Bills. Of course, we talked Chiefs and Lions. And we even mentioned Falcons Vikings. Any other games before I get to a 12 pack?
I gotta sneak this one in. I love these long shots, and they're giving the Panthers plus 12 and a half against the Eagles. That's too many points. I think that the Panthers are playing pretty well right now, and I know it's going to be difficult for Bryce Young against one of these best defenses, but give me the Panthers. I think that plus 12 and a half, they'll be able to cover that, and maybe giving Eagles a little run for their money. I don't think they're going to win, the Saquon second half effect is a real thing. That dude just breaks off deep runs, but I could see it being close until Saquon breaks off a 50-yarder and puts him in the coffin. That's what does give you a little bit of, insecurity about that bet, but I think that the Panthers are doing well enough. Bryce Young's starting to fire. He's definitely earned himself another year as a starter, and I think they'll be able to do make a little noise in Philadelphia.
One of the most profitable bets of the season has been betting Eagles live. They're like one of the worst first quarter teams in the league. I think they might be the worst first quarter team in the league. They've scored, I don't know if they've scored a touchdown in the first quarter all season long. They're always behind. If you just wait till the end of the first quarter and then bet Eagles, you get a lot better price than you do at the start of every single game. And I mean, the Panthers have been hot. Of course, as a Chiefs guy, I was like, Panthers are actually pretty good. They had won what 3 games in a row, then they lose to the Chiefs on a last second field goal, and then they they'd won 2 games in a row. Then they lose to the Chiefs on a last second field goal, and then they took Tampa Bay to overtime, and they really should have won that game if it wasn't for Chuba Hubbard. He really screwed me over majorly and
Yep.
fumbles the ball. So, yeah, Panthers are definitely playing better than their record would suggest right now. I don't know if I'll be touching that game, but it makes sense.
I'm with it. All right, I think that's about it. Jameis is going to Pittsburgh for another AFC North showdown. That should be interesting. Gonna have my eyes on that one, but you really never know how a game with Jameis Winston's gonna go. I kind of wish it was prime time though to get some more quotes out of him.
Yeah, that's enough, Jameis. For you don't need him every week. That's what makes it special. You get those Jameis moments. Now to the 12 pack, weekly 12 pack, where we rank the top 12 teams in the NFL, the tastiest of the bunch. Last week, here was Luke's top 12. Lions 1, Bills 2, Ravens 3, Eagles 4, Chiefs 5, Vikings 6, Packers 7, Steelers 8, Chargers 9, Dolphins 10, Broncos 11, and Rams 12. Luke, anything that you wish you would have changed on that one?
Well, I didn't know Justin Tucker was gonna sell the game for the Ravens, so you gotta drop them at this point. But besides that, that's honestly quite tasty. Quite tasty.
I'll be the,
I figured the Dolphins would lose, but I had to throw them in because I do think that they're still up there.
I'll be the judge of that. The 12 pack really, you could, maybe four servings increments are kind of how, good way to do it. I think there's a big gap in each of the four serving increments. Teams 1 through 4 are Super Bowl contenders. Teams 4 through 8 are good playoff teams. And teams 9 through 12 are just like the best of the rest. I don't know if they're actually any good or not. But here we go. Number 12. I don't know if they're any good or not after the last 2 weeks, but they're back to being sneaky, and that's the Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals at 6-6 are number 12 in the 12 pack. Like I said earlier, it's a must-win game against Seattle, and I think they can do it. They've played 2 teams that are currently in the playoffs right now, very close on the road last couple of weeks. They've played a tough schedule. They get some easier games against the Panthers and the Patriots coming up, but it won't matter if they're 3 games back. So they have to win this one against the Seahawks. I still think they're a good enough team to do so. Cardinals at 12. First admission for this team on my 12 pack this season, and it's going to go to a believer in Bo Nix. You don't know Bo? Well, I'm trying to figure out Bo because this guy threw a dime for a 97-yard touchdown, gets the win against the Browns Monday night, and the Broncos are just playing well. This Bonito guy off the edge, he had a touchdown. Did he have a pick six touchdown? And he's one of the leaders in the NFL in sacks, playing tremendously. They've got a great offensive line. Cortland Sutton's a good player. The Broncos, Sean Payton, great coach. They surprised me. I was very low on the Broncos to start the season, and I finally will admit they are worthy of being admitted into the 12 pack for the first time for me this season. At number 10, maybe we jumped off them a little bit too quick. Maybe it was just a Cavante Turpin spin move. Number 10 is the Commies. They did lose that tough one to the Cowboys, but their other losses were against all good teams. You can't really fault them for any other losses, just that bad one against the Cowboys. They come back and just absolutely mollywop Tennessee like a good team's expected to do. They are comfortably in the playoffs right now. They've got a little bit of a cushion because there's nobody really on their heel for that final wild card spot. And if Jane Daniels can continue to look a little bit healthier, I was glad to see maybe the Kingsbury late season slide, at least for 1 week. They shook that off. Hopefully, they can continue that. Washington at 10. Number nine, the LA Chargers. They're a team that, they're the last fringe team. I don't know if they're actually any good or not, but they've got a good record right now and they won a lot of games. They've got a good coach. They've got a quarterback that's capable. So, I guess that's good enough to give them number nine for me. Now we'll move into the teams that are actually good teams. I think they're good playoff teams. The next section of four. Don't think that any of these can really win a Super Bowl. But at number eight, I'm going to go Minnesota Vikings. Vikings, they're just slowly but dropping off a little bit for me. Every week I get a little bit less impressed by them. And it's not because Darnold's gone full pumpkin mode. He actually has played pretty well. But I think people are kind of figuring out that defense that Flores had them just firing on all cylinders, just blitzing everybody, and people weren't prepared for it to start the season. The personnel isn't the best on the defense. The scheme is really good, but teams are starting to figure it out, being able to come up with more to attack that Minnesota Vikings defense. And where the hell is Justin Jefferson gone? I haven't seen a gritty in months, it feels like. I mean, that's the one thing Darnold hasn't been doing, getting the ball to Jay Jettas in open space. So Vikings drop below the Green Bay Packers for me, and the Packers are now number 7 in the 12 pack. Another team I kind of talked about their wins recently, maybe a little bit of fool's gold. Out in San Francisco, the 49ers, they look for the real gold, but certainly not with Braylon Allen or whoever that quarterback is. He's fool's gold. And so was that win against Nick Bosa. And then you play the Dolphins in the cold. So what does that really count for? But Packers have jumped the Vikings for me in my 12 pack. And Luke, that is the bottom half of the 12 pack, 7 through 12. Teams that I guess I like, but not the upper echelon.
Yeah, I think that your bottom four are actually pretty good. Those are teams that are in the playoffs and could win a playoff game, but don't see them going to any championship game or anything like that. The one thing I do have a problem, Brent. I think that the NFC North teams, I think they should be ahead of those two AFC North teams you have coming up here. I think that the Packers and the Vikings are both better than the Steelers and the Ravens based off of what we've seen, based off the way that they've been playing this last month. The Steelers have dropped a bad one to the Browns. The Ravens have lost two out of their last three. And I feel like it's time to move the NFC North teams above the AFC North teams. That's my opinion, but let's see what you got for the rest of the 12 pack.
Oh, well, you've hit it right on the head. At number 6 is the Baltimore Ravens. I still have the Ravens ahead of the Packers and the Vikings because I trust their quarterback and coach more than I do the other guys. I like LaFleur and I especially like Kevin O'Connell, but Harbaugh and Lamar just different. They're more dynamic. The Ravens, they're a great offense that can beat any team on any given week, but they can also lose a lot of games. So I guess, yeah, they are more inconsistent than the Packers and Vikings, who have just been reeling off victories. But the Ravens, I think, overall are the better team when you match these teams up against each other. So I've got the Ravens at 6, and right ahead of them, Steelers at 5. I had the Ravens ahead of the Steelers even after the Ravens got beat by Pittsburgh, but can't do it after the Ravens continue to just yo-yo back and forth between wins and losses. Pittsburgh, meanwhile, comes up with an impressive win with Russell Wilson. Russ. They beat the Vikings. I mean, they beat the Bengals and just absolutely dominated, scoring 44 points. Really impressive. So the Steelers showing that different dimension, being able to score and outscore a team gives them maybe a little bit more. That's why I have to put them at 5. They're the top team. I really don't think they can win the Super Bowl, but I think they're the most dynamic of them just because now they're showing something different. They've got the defensive player of the year, in my opinion, TJ Watt on the other end. Tomlin's coaching up well. Pickens always does something crazy every week, but he's also really good at football. That overshadows it. He's becoming a top tier receiver, even though he's an absolute head case. So I've got the Steelers at number 5. And then at number 4, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles. So Eagles at number 4. Everybody wants to have the Eagles talk of the town. Oh, they're so good. Well, what did they do that's really that impressive? I mean, they've beaten who? They haven't beaten that many playoff teams. They finally get one marquee win. Okay, they beat the Baltimore Ravens. Well, guess what? The team right below them in the 12 pack, the Steelers, they've beaten the Ravens. The team at the very bottom of the standings, the Raiders, they've beaten the Raiders. The team above them in the 12 pack at number 3, the Kansas City Chiefs, they've beaten the Ravens. So I've got the Chiefs at number 3. That's where I had them 2 weeks ago. Nothing has changed for the top 3, in my opinion. The Chiefs are still right now the third best team in the NFL. That doesn't mean I think they're the third most likely to win the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean that at all. That doesn't mean that I don't expect Kansas City to finish third place when it's all said and done. But what it does mean is right now, in week 13, week 14, when the Chiefs are still just practicing plays, seeing what they can do on a 3rd and 2, instead of trying to win the game and run out the clock, they're like, oh, let's see if Xavier Worthy wants to catch a deep ball. If we can do a deep throw on 3rd and 2 instead of just getting the first down, then yeah, maybe they're the third best team in the NFL. So I've got Kansas City at 3. Number 2, Buffalo Bills remain at number 2. Superhero at quarterback. Give a lot of credit to that team. They've been on an uptick, and I don't know if it's going to slow down anytime soon. But number 1 stays the Detroit Lions. Maybe if Eberflus knew what a timeout was, they wouldn't be number 1 here in this 12 pack. But they play the games, and alas, that's what happened. So give the Lions credit. 11-1, having a fantastic season. And right now, today, early December, they are the best team in the NFL.
Certainly they are. And even if they get that timeout called, they still have to make a pretty long field goal and beat the Lions in overtime. I did not see that happening at all. So I really wasn't too worried unless they would have scored a touchdown on that last drive. But anyways, that's the past. Who cares about that? That was a pretty solid 12 pack. I still think the Eagles have to be above the Chiefs. I think those top 3 teams at this point in the year, the way they've been playing, you got to put those as the top 3. Any order you have those, I could understand. Obviously, I think Lions should be number 1, but Chiefs are locked in at the 4 right now. And anyone, with unbiased projections, in my opinion,
Because what? Because they beat the Ravens? Then Kansas City do that? Then they do that also? You just forgot about that game because it was the very first game of the season, and this is the most recent one. Looks like some recency bias. Tell me, have the Eagles done anything else this season that warrants them being ahead of Kansas City?
well, they have won a lot of games in a row. They destroyed the Commanders, and I feel like the Eagles, the way they've been playing, has been a lot more convincing than the Chiefs, just by the product they're putting out on the field. With the way Saquon's been playing, and the Chiefs are squeaking by here. Now, I'm not saying I would take. I mean, honestly, I feel like I would probably take the Eagles to win in a game, but the Chiefs could definitely beat them. The Chiefs could beat anybody. We've seen that, and there's no
Uh,
denying that.
you know what would
So
be
I
awesome?
understand you putting them.
I mean, the last time the Chiefs played, when Patrick Mahomes had to play a team that he'd already played in a Super Bowl and he'd already beaten them in a Super Bowl, it went pretty well for Kansas City. So I wouldn't mind if they saw a team that they'd already played in a Super Bowl, that they've already beaten in a Super Bowl. Do that again. I wouldn't be fine if Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have 2 rings over the 49ers and 2 rings over the Philadelphia Eagles. Sign me up for that one.
That's fair enough. But everyone knows it's not coming down to that. It's going to be the Detroit Lions. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. That was a pretty tasty 12 pack. Bernie, you want to go over your bets of the week?
I like the underdogs of Falcons in Minnesota and Chicago in San Francisco. I like Isaiah Pacheco over rushing yards in the Kansas City Chiefs Los Angeles Chargers game.
Those are some good bets. I'm with you with the Falcons and Bears for sure. We went over that. I do like the Rams. If you don't want to go money line, take the points. I think it'll be close. Plus 3.5 is pretty solid. We're rocking with the Cardinals this week. Panthers. Take the Detroit Lions. Get them to win this game. Get their spread. I think we're going to be able to win by about 7 and take Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to get at least 1 touchdown. Take his overs on yards and sprinkling a little 2+ touchdown, a little 3+ touchdown. Could even be locked in this game. We're going to feed him. This is the Gibbs game. I'm calling it. Everyone have a great week.
Yep, that is the Hesse Bros pod, week 14. Moving on up there this season. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, comment below your favorite picks and what your opinions are on my 12 pack this week. And have a great weekend. Enjoy some football and go Chiefs.